A green flag is shown at the end of the pit lane, and 50-plus GT3 cars venture out onto a damp, a greasy, a treacherous circuit for the warm-up session before tomorrow's Total 24 Hours of Spa and before we get to Superpole, which will decide the top 20 places on the grid. That is coming up very shortly. All the qualifying was done yesterday, after pre-qualifying, after practice and before night practice. This, for many teams, is a chance to see if any problems are ironed out. For others, it's a chance to get ready for that very exciting shootout. 2 laps per driver, 1 driver nominated for each car for Superpole coming up in about half an hour's time. The circuit has had a lot of rain over the last few hours. It is drying, but it's still far from dry. So for Superpole particularly, it's going to be a bit heart in mouth. But let's enjoy and chat through the warm-up and pick out some of the start cars and drivers into this year's Total 24 Hours of Spa. David Addison and John Watson in good voice, ready for half an hour of warm-up and then Superpole. And as ever, John, we've got the light to factor in, we've got the damp road to factor in, and a very busy circuit in this warm-up session.
Indeed, and these track conditions probably not very dissimilar to how the sessions we had last night, those 4 qualifying sessions concluded. And just to give us an idea of just what we might expect, the quickest time was the Audi. Kelvin van der Linde was stunning, a 2:35.0797, and already we've got a spinner up on the top at Lake Coombe. So track conditions catching out. Drivers who maybe ought to know, that's one of the Ferraris, I think. But maybe the 488 Rinaldi car.
Indeed, so it is treacherous. 488 Pierre Eret was the man getting it wrong. There, adding to the variety, is the Honda Acura NSX, the car that is going to be driven at the moment by Dane Cameron. And that just prompts me to make the point that the Total 24 Hours of Spa is not only a round of GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS Endurance Cup, but it is also a round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. And the evening broadcast is powered not just by Pirelli, but thanks to the IGTC's media team, by Valdieu, which is a splendid 9% Belgian beer. They have looked after me well by going off and finding one of the rare beers I've never tried before. Words may not flow the more bottles of this consumed during the course of the warm-up, but bear with me. Thank you to the media team for their stoic efforts. Now, the Honda down the hill, and this is Speaker's Corner, turn 9. Let's get track limits out of the way first. We discussed it yesterday. I've had a long chat with the race director this morning. Turn 9 is not really being policed because everybody's at it. So it's all gloves are off now. You can all go wide there because we can't police it. One of the things that's changed at Spa for this year is that the AstroTurf has been removed from behind the curbing. So now the drivers are taking more liberties. But the real area that they are policing is turn 4, up through Radion, partly because it's very fast, partly because it can be dangerous if people do take the liberties, but also because it helps the driver if you straight line that. You haven't got the physical forces going through your body. Now, why is it only one corner being policed? Well, again, partly because of the COVID world in which we live, it is just not practical to have the number of people on site as judges of fact, nor the number of people you would need in race control to trawl through all the GPS of every car from every lap to see if they were going wide at more corners than just Radion. So we're dependent on a judge of fact, 2 marshals, 2 judges of fact appointed at Radion, and they are there with the sole task, not of waving flags or anything like that, just checking for track limits. It gets harder, nay impossible in the dark, but it's Radion where the track limit factor is going to be, and it's largely that's the only place you can police it properly with the limited number of people that are on site. So if you were asking the question last night about track limits, that's a long-winded answer to it.
Well, I have to say, for every competitor, they're probably rubbing their hands and saying, happy days. We can straight line parts of the racetrack where we were never allowed to go anywhere near. But in the interest of all the circumstance and medical and whatever, maybe it's the pragmatic judgment because, of course, you need the number of people to be every corner. I mean, for example, coming out of Blanchimont, we saw, first of all, one of the most scary things we have seen was that one of the Audis going slowly and all of a sudden passed by a Lamborghini almost between the Audi and the barriers. So track limits, let's say, people are trying to observe them. Competitors are trying to observe them, but in certain circumstances, they're being flagrantly abused on the other hand.
I mean, there's another school of thought that you can debate amongst yourselves. John will have a thought, I know. If you can't police something fully, you can only half police it, then why police it at all? Because some people will be disadvantaged unfairly, some will be advantaged unfairly. So you either do it all or do it not at all, don't you?
Well, it's a case of hard cases make bad law. And very often, look, we live in a society where we're governed by laws. Many of them we might disagree with, and many of them we may ignore. But it's at our peril, because the hand of the law will come along and, snatch our shoulder and say, right, my son, you've been charged with doing this, that or the other. But here today, it's only going to be at the exit of Radio. Now, Radio is clearly the most demanding corner because of the circumstances. You've got the compression of Eau Rouge, then the very steep climb up to Radio. It is a blind part of the racetrack. Momentarily, drivers do not have any vision what is directly beyond the crest at Radio. So it's a place where they can monitor driving. And look, if you get one driving standards issue for track abuse limits at Radio, it's no different to getting one in every other corner around the racetrack. You're going to be done anyway.
It's true enough, isn't it? Well, it'll be a factor, no doubt, when we get to the race tomorrow. But remember, it's going to start at 3:30 local time, and we finish at 2:30 on Sunday. We're not doing 23 hours, but it is, of course, the clock change here this weekend, so it will be 24, but there will be a difference in the hour at which we start and finish. Now, the Bentley teams, Team Parker Racing running number 11, have been praying for a dry track. Bentleys don't like the wet particularly. Ewan Mackay, very, very impressive young British driver. We saw in GT4 Series last year. He is behind the wheel at the moment, and this is a team that really struggled yesterday in the mixed conditions. Their task in this session, John, really is just to get the car race ready, isn't it?
Very much so. I mean, in reality, that's the case for everybody. Just go out. The teams have worked very, very hard since the end of that qualifying session last night, and then look round the outside. The Bentley really ought to be more on the right-hand side of the racetrack. Porsche had to go offline, off the racetrack, to get around it. So the Bentley not running at speed right now, but must be keeping an eye, even though the visibility behind is masked in spray. But there are covers coming. All have got the headlights on. There's the GPX Porsche that had to take the long route round the Paul Franco, now up into turn 17 and 18.
Go back to your Formula One days, your Group C days. Do these warm-up sessions achieve very much for the teams, or do you feel that you really ought to be out there just because?
It can be both. I mean, I remember on occasions when we did a total car reset on the suspension, and it transformed the car. So the warm-up was absolutely vital to us, gave us a heads up as the direction we want to go in for that race. For a 24-hour race, to me, the teams will have worked through the night in many cases to prepare their cars. It's a 30-minute session to go out and ensure that all that work has been carried out. There isn't any sort of finger problems or something that should be attached, not attached correctly. I remember one time going out in a car at a race, went out, did a couple of laps, installation laps, came in, looked down, and I noticed a nut was missing from a bolt in a suspension mounting at the front of the car. And I flagged down to the engineer who was looking after the car and I said, do you think there should be a nut on that bolt, or is it just me? The poor bloke, I mean, talk about freezing on the spot. But that was actually in a session, not even in a warm-up session. So there are many, many things, complicated bits of machinery, lots, and particularly on a GT car where everything is enclosed, accessibility is difficult. So the amount of work that will have taken place overnight to prepare these cars for tomorrow's 24-hour race, this is the last chance they will have, other than those 20 going into the shootout who will do an out lap, a flying lap and an in lap. But that's a different deal altogether. This is just to ensure that all the hard yards that have been carried out by the teams that will have worked tirelessly, even under more difficult circumstances due to COVID-19, to prepare all the 56 cars that will take when the lights go out at 3:30. Again, look at that running so far wide coming out of Blanchimont. Well, anyway, listen, look, it doesn't matter. Just get on and do it.
Exactly, get the laps in. Just on those teams that do need this mileage, 27, Tom Blondquist's Ferrari, that's had an engine change, work completed. and that's good news because that should be the first one to go in Superpole as Miguel Molina goes second in this session. And also number 9 Bentley that had an engine change yesterday, that is in the session as well. Andy Soucek has been out, come back into the pits to check it all over, but that's another car that missed a lot of mileage yesterday.
Well, there is the star, I felt, of qualifying last night. Kelvin van der Linde did that stunning lap. Now on track, looking down to see, well, he's just really getting up to speed. So van der Linde has yet to record a top 20 time, but that car, I mean, already 0.2 of a second up in the first sector. And Kelvin van der Linde, the two bonded on a difficult track, a track that was drying throughout the session in night time. Whether he was on slicks or not, we were never really found out that they'd changed. We know that Sven Muller went on to slicks earlier in his Porsche and didn't seem to like him, but Kelvin van der Linde was absolutely magic. I mean, to do a lap of 2 minutes, what was it, 25 or so? I'm trying to look and see, get my timing and scoring on that one. 2:35, it was just unbelievable.
And he didn't put a wheel wrong, did he? I mean, he was, as you say, not just quick, he was smooth, he was consistent, exactly what you need to be to win a 24-hour race, of course.
Metronomic. Just don't make mistakes on the racetrack. Avoid incidents if you can. Certainly if there has been an incident, be very, very circumspect in how you cherry-pick your way through whatever debris may be on the racetrack. Time lost into the pit lane, work on a car. You'll never make that up. I mean, listen, it's bad enough that the Capex Bentley has got to start at the back of the field. It might even start in the pit lane, the number 9 Bentley. For them, that team, to make up the ground that they've lost by starting at the tail of the field, that's going to take them probably at least 2 hours to get close to where their natural pace would have them in the field.
This is a fair point, and that's, again, the importance of keeping out of trouble in those first few laps, starting from the pit lane. If you're near the back of the grid, could be a very shrewd move. Any dramas are ahead of you, even if you're on the front row. Just ask Alessandro Pierguidi. It can still go wrong, even if you're on the front row of the grid. Can't it, John?
Indeed it did. We asked the question on the grid and we got the consequence, but 300 yards further down the racetrack. The miracle was that Alessandro Pierguidi did a brilliant job in avoiding the entire field, or maybe the entire field did a brilliant job avoiding him. Whichever way round, nobody hit him, and he deserved to be hit, frankly, because to spin from pole position up at the top of radio on the opening lap, I mean, there is no excuse for that, in my book.
Well, your man van der Linde is rising to the challenge here. He's gone fastest in this warm-up session. Just to make the point, we're not chasing times here, but the times are interesting, and it's useful to see the pace for those going into Superpole. As you look at number 34 BMW, Augusto Farfus. The BM struggling for grip a little bit in the qualifying yesterday. This is the car that Augusto shares with Nick Katzberg, recent Nürburgring 24-hour winner, and Philip Eng. So it's a good combination of drivers in this car, isn't it?
I mean, it's one of those cars, and then maybe the weather factor will be the factor that might preclude getting to the front and maybe being at the front at the end. But it's a very strong driver lineup, and I think the BMW is a car that really suits the character of Spa-Francorchamps 7, and a little bit kilometres around, long flowing corners for the most part of the lap, a couple of tight bits up at Lake Coombe, and then of course at the chicane itself coming onto pit straight. But never ever discount one of these two Valkenhurst BMWs.
No, absolutely not. 35 has got a good lineup as well. That's the car just ahead of us as we wriggle out of the chicane. And Augusto Farfus working his way through this 20-minute session. Some teams might let one driver do all the duties, others might rotate drivers through, give them all a bit of mileage and do practice pit stops. Alessandro Pierguidi is now at the top of the times, 2 minutes 35.319. Christopher Harsa has just gone up to third. Sorry, John, yeah.
No, I was just going to say that the track is improving again, as we saw last night by the lap. I mean, the time that Audi Sport WRT did, average over 4 of the stints was at 2 minutes 35.0. A single lap by Alessandro Pierguidi is within just under 0.3 of a second. So, considering these drivers have been off track for the best part of, 22 or so hours, pretty impressive. So, track conditions very similar to how they ended up at the end of last night.
That's true enough, isn't it? As Pierre Guidi, Van der Linde, Harsa, Cairoli, the top of the order. Andrea Calderelli, the dominant man in the championships last year, be it sprint or endurance. Well, the championships aren't really going according to plan at the moment, but a Spa 24-hour win would be very welcome, and he does the absolute best last sector and goes second now in this warm-up session.
Yes, I mean, the team, again, as everybody would have done, have been refining their car. And look, the top 20 times are so close and so competitive. Although there's a prestige and an honour of being in pole position, and that you're the beneficiary of all the publicity that goes with it, ultimately, it doesn't give you an automatic shoe-in to standing on the winner's podium after 24 hours. And a team like FFS Racing, who were so powerful, so dominant last year, they understand what it is required to win a race. And winning a race is coming first. It's not being consistently, or from occasions, the fastest car on the racetrack. We've gone through all this over yesterday's broadcast. Time lost is time you can never make up, whether it's a driver error or a mechanical error in the pit lane or just a mechanical error. So that's a smooth, well-oiled racing machine. And Andrea Calderelli drives the car and seems to run the team pretty much, as from what I can see. It's a team that has not this year enjoyed the level of success that it did in 2019. They would like to set that to rights here this weekend.
Absolutely right, because this is the showpiece GT3 race anywhere, never mind within the GT World Challenge Europe or the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. Calderelli down towards Pont, then this lap not looking quite so quick, whereas Christopher Harsa has done an absolute best middle sector. Way wide there at Pont goes the Porsche KCMG here with a brace of them. This is Alexandre Imperatori fighting the car into the pit path, John.
Yeah, I know, he was certainly very wide as he came out of Pujol, and again seemed to continue that trend into Fagnes, that sort of pit path, the right and left. One of the places on the racetrack you might see an occasional attempt at overtaking, but one that's not easy to execute. It's a corner sequence of corners relatively easily defended, but Imperatori pushing very hard, got personal best, improving significantly first sector, even more significantly second sector. So the 43 Porsche looking to see where they are presently. It ought to get itself comfortably into the top 20 if it isn't 34. No, I can't find it in the timing of scoring right now. So it's, I'm sorry, 43rd place, the 20 number 21 Porsche. So it's about to go into comfortably the top 40, maybe the top 30, maybe even the top 20 as he comes across start finish line. 19th, there we go.
Yep, top 20, absolutely right, top 19. And just looking at those speeds on our Race Vision powered by AWS graphic, 227 kilometres an hour through Blanchimont for some of the really brave drivers. That is impressive. We have news of a spin from Ollie Wilkinson's McLaren. He was off the road last night, wasn't he, as well, in the McLaren, Ollie Wilkinson, but he's had a spin in the McLaren at turn 5. So that's Les Combes, where he went off yesterday.
Yeah, same place, went off either just on the entry into Les Combes or the quick cut back to the left, but that's where the McLaren ended up briefly. Had a sort of slightly adventurous session or series of sessions last night. Had a mechanical issue which meant the team had the car stop on the circuit. They did a reset and then drove it back to the pits and checked it out and sent it back out again.
Well, Christopher Harsa is at the top. You're looking at 88 Mercedes. Raffaele Marciello is at the wheel of it. They've not really done much in this session yet, not done a time. He's behind the wheel, just making sure everything is okay. But it's been a really relaxed attitude that they had to not just this warm-up session, but also night practice last night. They weren't chasing times like other people, were they? They were just getting the drivers through, do our 2 laps, yep, done it, park it, look after the car.
Well, I think it's a very good approach to any event, let alone a 24-hour race. You have a schedule of events that you want to go through with the car, with the drivers, cycle all 3 drivers in this case in the 88 Mercedes, get them cycled, do the nighttime driving. We've done what we're going to do. We've got ourselves into the top 20 shootout, I believe. Yes, they have.
Yeah.
Raffaele Marciello will be, he's the 4th. This car was 4th quickest overall. So their focus was just doing the set of tasks that they had. Stop chasing the circuit. There was nothing to be gained once you got into the top 20 in terms of who came quickest in the top 20, other than, well, it's nice to walk away on Friday evening saying we were fastest, but it doesn't count for anything. But there, now that's cutting across the inside of radio, and that's the kind of thing that track limit abuse will be monitoring and may well be flagged up on timing and scoring. Wait to see whether that comes up for 88 as well.
Keeping an eye to the message lines here, but Raffaele Marciello looking quick. This is his first flying lap of the session. It may well only be Raffaele that goes for a time in this, because he will be the driver for whom this car has got to work. He is the gun in it. He's way wide up the curve at Les Combes. Traffic ahead, flashes past the Porsche.
Yeah, see, he ran just on the curb. The curbs, of course, are still much wetter than the racetrack, and the curbs themselves are painted, so a wet painted curb is never ideal. Runs very wide again on the exit out of the speaker's corner. It's a funny name, I can never get my head around. Now into Pujol, still having to battle the car. So whatever way that this particular Mercedes has been set up on the initial entry, he's having to make a correction. He's making corrections pretty much all the way through, and on the exit of Pujol, then down into Fagnon, the fifth lap. Traffic, just what way is that traffic going to go? It's one of the Bentleys, that's the Parker Bentley. Will it go one way or the other, or will he, to some degree, determine it by making the Bentley stay where he wants it to stay, which is, in effect, what Raffaele Marciello did. This, the pace and the body language of the Mercedes sent out a clear message to the Bentley: stay where you are, I'm coming through on the left-hand side.
Just watching this lap, and you talked about the correction that he's making behind the wheel of the car. How do we describe this track surface? Is this wet? Is it damp? Is it greasy? Where would you put your money?
Horrible. Horrible. Because it's neither fish nor fowl.
Yeah.
It's a slick, damp circuit right now, and of course wet weather tires do like more water. The way they're designed to work is almost use the water as a block, grabbing hold of it, and this is this sort of scummy, indescript kind of surface. But you know, it's the surface that in wet weather conditions, by and large, it's going to be more like this than it's going to be, as we would have seen last year where we had biblical rain. So this is something you've got to get used to. This is what teams will be working around. Ideally, they would like a dry car setup, but we have seen a number of drivers complaining last night that their setup, in the case, I think, that Sky Tempesta Ferrari, Chris Froggatt, indicating that the car was probably too stiff for these wet, slick, horrible conditions.
Pressing on here, 98 Porsche, so one of the two Rover Racing entries. Laurens Vanthoor at the wheel of it. And this looks like a very committed lap indeed. The Rover Porsches, to use that phrase, flew under the radar a bit last night, but when we get to Super Bowl, I think that might well be something different.
Yeah, just watching the way the car came through the exit radio up on the curve, the camel curve, before you come onto Camel Straight, you could sense that this is a lap where Laurens Vanthoor is focused. He's going to get the best out of the car. This may be his first flying lap. Certainly doesn't seem to be in the top 20, so but it's actually 21st right now, and on 2 minutes 37. So I'm assuming, and again, look at the hand movements, nowhere near as frenetic as we saw from those of Raffaele Marciello in the 88 Mercedes-Benz. And remember, this is a rear-engine car as opposed to a front mid-engine Mercedes-Benz. So the basic layout of this car is something from the arc in reality. I mean, it was designed way back in the early 60s, went into production in 1964. I have to cough. I can't even say 1964 without coughing.
Well, there is the Porsche.
Looks great.
It does, it does. And the nice thing about it is that Porsche, and we've said this, John, in other rounds of the championship, they care about the heritage, don't they? And you've got the cars running in a livery from the GPX team with a nod to the past. You can see that 911, yes, it's got big flared wheel arches and a big rear wing on the back, but you can see that original 911 shape still in there.
Absolutely, the heritage. You remember back in the early 80s, at one point, Porsche thought, we're finished, the 911 is done. We're going to go down the route water-cooled front-engine product. And thankfully, somebody in the business, in the company, had the capacity to say, well, let's not be rash. this car has been in production in one form or another since 1964. I mean, it is phenomenal. 56 years they've been making 911s in one form or another. And the form is fundamentally the same. The detail, miles on, but a tribute to development over design. If you ever look at a product that is about development over design, it is the Porsche 911.
And Porsche has been, throughout that time, committed to the sport, whether it's been in sports prototypes, whether it's GT cars, or it's single-make championships. And we've got a lot of Porsches on the grid. We talked about it yesterday. The drivers, many of them factory drivers, they're not just here for a weekend's activity. They are here to win. They mean business. So does this man, Fred Vervish, local hero, of course, driving for the Audi Sport team Attempto Racing. And Fred Vervish is another man on a mission because he's up to John's second fastest.
And I tell you, coming through the Paul Frere curve, he leant on that left rear as he comes into Blanchimont. Absolute commitment, absolute confidence from the Belgian coming through the exit of Blanchimont. So currently second pictures. He's not going to improve on this lap because he hasn't any green, certainly no purple showing. But again, the body language of the Audi looks so good to me. That indicates confidence from the car, confidence from the driver.
So there is Fred Vervish plunging downhill past the endurance pits. Let's look at some of the speeds through Eau Rouge here, because our race vision powered by AWS graphics says Raffaele Marciello 223 kilometres an hour at the turning points there for Eau Rouge. So that is impressive. 214 for Patrick Pilet, 212 for Robert Renard, but 223 clicks in the Mercedes, John. That takes large whatnots, doesn't it?
It takes commitment, and Raffaele Marciello, I think that might be his middle name, Raffaele Commitment Marciello. I mean, I love watching him drive because he's exciting. He brings visual stimulation to a TV screen. When he's on screen, the car is doing it's dancing. Not strictly, but it is dancing.
There's less than a lap time left in this warm-up session. Then the teams have a quick break and get ready. In some cases for Super Pole, in others they head back to their base and get ready for a long day tomorrow. There is Fred Vervish into Pouhon. The Attempto team for whom he drives, we've seen as a race winner, but it's a big boost for the team here, John, is it not? Because Attempto now carrying Audi Sport colours. Effectively, it's therefore being factory blessed for this weekend.
And I think rightly too, because the team are doing a great job, and they've got a stellar lineup of drivers. When you've got 11 Porsches competing, Audi had to step up to the plate. They couldn't just leave the door open. So it's a sister company, remember, VW Audi own Porsche, so it's a sister company, but I mean two diametrically different philosophies in design and execution. I mean, you might take your girlfriend out in an Audi, but at the same time you would take your wife out in the Porsche, wouldn't you?
I'll leave that hanging. You can answer the question yourselves, everybody. But the other sister brands from VAG here, Lamborghini, Bentley, so they can't go wrong, really. Vervish gets stuck in the traffic. So that's that lap done, and he might actually bail because there's only a handful of seconds left. Yeah, he's going to park it, isn't he, and get ready for Super Pole. Fred Vervish will be the 18th driver of the 20 to go. They go in reverse order of last night. He's got a real chance, I would have thought, of putting that car onto ultimate pole position. Certainly the way that he's just been hustling it on. Raffaele Marciello is in Super Pole as well. And look at this lap, an absolute best. Now, is this a little taste of what's to come, John?
Well, just watching his hands, a lot less movement of the steering wheel. Everything looks a little bit more controlled, a little bit happier from the seat of Raffaele Marciello up the hill now. So coming up to Blanchimont, let's have a look and see. The first part is nothing, just ignore it. Get the car over to the right-hand side, staying off, and he's backed out of it. He's not, I mean, he did a stunning middle sector. He's dropped off by 2.2 seconds in the middle sector, so he's coming into the pit lane. But he will have learned something on that first sector, because that's 0.3 and a bit second up on what anybody else has done. So Impressive from the young Italian.
We understand that Kevin Estra's Porsche is slow on track with a puncture. Now, we had punctures in night practice yesterday evening, and we've got one again now. What do we read into this, if anything, I wonder?
Abuse of track limits, running over curbs, cutting down a tyre. It's not debris on the racetrack as far as I think, although there were incidents in the previous support events that have been taking place here today. I suspect that drivers are cutting the sidewall because they're running the curbs and they're running way over the curbs, going off track. I think that might be one reason, may not be in this case, but it might be one reason why we're seeing a number of tyres. We call them punctures, but normally it's a tyre getting cut, a sidewall or the tread of the tyre getting cut by a sharp edge on some of the curbs around the racetrack.
And there it is, John.
Not pretty to look at, is it?
No, you're right. Kevin Est nursing the car back, but you can see how slowly you've got to go. And imagine this is in the race. Imagine this is in the darkness. It will just cost you lap after lap, won't it?
Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, the way this race is being won is by cutting out unnecessary risks. Now, Kevin Estra may have done nothing wrong. I might be making an assumption that he's been being a very abusive boy by cutting track limits or abusing track limits. It may be something entirely different. But cutting down tyres, especially at the point when you're just about to go into first sector, midway through first sector, you've got another 5 and a bit kilometres of the racetrack, and you need to come back at a low pace, because if one of those tyres then starts to flail around, I mean, he's at the lowest part of the racetrack right now. He's coming up to the end of sector 2. He's still got the best part of a kilometre and a bit to climb all the way up on the exit of Paul Frecker. I mean, Kevin Estra is going up. I mean, he can probably walk quicker than he's driving.
I mean, he's doing the right thing in terms of nursing the car so that rubber doesn't start to flail and damage the bodywork, because they need this car in a few minutes to Super Pole. But yeah, this is at snail's pace, and it's a slow
Very
snail.
much so. I mean, I wonder, is he actually going to stop? Because normally that would be, I mean, that's look at that. What is going on here? Oh, look, I can't even say what I wanted to say. I mean, that was scary. But that, I mean, Kevin Estra is literally, you could walk almost at the pace he's driving right now. Now, maybe there's an issue, a secondary issue, which he's trying to baby or bandage, that he doesn't want to develop, to have a bearing on what might happen in this 20-minute or the 20-car shootout that we're going to see very shortly.
That Mercedes that had to go around the outside, all these cars have taken the checkered flag. This is their in-lap. Some still pressing on, which, okay, they're at liberty to do, but they don't need to be doing. They've taken the flag, so that was a big moment. Benjamin Heites, I think it was, in number 89 Mercedes. So, warm-up is done. For the purposes of record, Alessandro Pierguidi was the quickest, and there Phil Keane fastest within Pro-Am for the Orange One FFF racing team. So the cars now come down the pit road, and we will get set ready for Super Pole. As you see there, the Giancarlo Fisichella driven Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari.
I mean, David, has that been going cross-country or something?
Well, I was
just the muck on the front of it.
Just wondering about that. It's filthy, isn't it?
Pigging.
We had a shot from the onboard and the screen looked dirty, but yeah, I'm sure it can't be Giancarlo. Somebody must have been off the road ahead of him and splattered him. What do you think?
Oh, but definitely. I mean, that's not something. I mean, a driver making an error wouldn't get that kind of paint or splatter on the paintwork. That's from another vehicle. But I mean, whoever it was, we didn't catch it, we didn't see it. But Giancarlo certainly would have done, because not only would the bodywork have been covered in it, so would the windscreen. And, you know, getting mud off our windscreen, no easy task.
Well, they don't need to worry about the car for Super Pole. We catch up on the warm-up times, where Alessandro Pierguidi was quicker than Fred Verviche. Kevin Estra went third on the lap before we saw him with the puncture. So he ragged the Porsche, and then the tyre went bang, but he was third, and he's not yet made it to the pit lane, by the way. Christopher Harsa fourth from Andrea Calderelli, Patrick Pilet sixth from Raffaele Marciello, then Kelvin van der Linde ahead of Mathieu Verzivière and Davide Rigon to round out the top 10. But as we've been making the point, this doesn't affect your grid. This just gives the teams a chance to sort out any dramas from last night and or get ready for Super Pole, which is going to be the next focus when the cars are released for that, and the Superpole session declared wet. So we'll get ready for Superpole in a few moments. They get 2 laps, by the way. So an out, 2 laps, and an in lap, and you count your quicker lap time. So it's not your second one, it's not the 2 combined and then aggregated. It is your faster lap that will count for the grid position within the top 20. All these other teams can watch the screens and watch the other drivers at work. 56 cars we have for the total 24 hours of Spa, and it's going to be a fascinating grid when it is all sorted out after Superpole and after any penalties, because you've got things that may have happened over the course of this weekend. You've got previous behavioural warning points that issue penalties, so it's not purely down to the times, and that's why that will be confirmed when we get to the build up to the race tomorrow. So there, all 56 have been out. That's good news. It means that for the moment at least nobody's got a problem, and the teams now are looking on ready for Superpole. There, the Mercedes teams are preparing. ACA ASP, they're in the bottom pits. Now, just to quickly explain about Superpole, you have a target time that you are meant to leave the pit lane at, or very, very close to. We've had in the past people arriving too late and therefore not being allowed out, or losing the time because they were too late for their allotted time. So at 18:22, Tom Blondquist should go, and then it's a 1 minute interval, car, all the way through that top 20.
The bottom pits, when you look at them and compare to the pits at the top, they look really mean. There's barely the size of the Mercedes. There's barely space on either side for any of the engineers to have access, easy access to Raffaele's Mercedes, as they're doing a small engine check. I don't know what that would be. Then Porsche, finally, Cabanestra has made it back, and by coming back at that snail's pace, clearly he's ensured that there's no further damage. But again, they're going to have to check around that rear suspension to make sure that nothing has not so much become detached, but maybe been hit when the tyre went down quite quickly. The other thing, of course, when that rear tyre goes down, and especially because these cars run limited slip diffs, or maybe in some cases a locked diff, they don't like that very sudden difference and differential of the size of the tyre that's inflated to the tyre that's been punctured or cut down. So those are little areas where there'll be areas of concern, thinking about it. Maybe that's the reason why Cabanestra decided to come back at the pace he did, to not further damage potentially something that could be at risk.
You see there the CMR team doing practice pit stops, and one of the drivers that is within the GPX team is Mathieu Jaminet, and let's hear his thoughts after the warm-up. He is with Gemma Scott.
Mathieu, we've just seen the warm-up. We've seen how difficult the track looks out there. Patrick is ready to head out now for Superpole.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's see how it develops. We're going to start one of the last cars, second last. So let's see how it goes. It can play in our favor, driving at the end. So let's see. Patrick did a good job and said the car was great now in the warm-up. So yeah, let's go for pole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another of the very, very impressive lineup that Porsche boasts. Same is true of Mercedes and Lamborghini and Audi. They're the Lexus being cleaned and then put to bed, because that's not going to be involved in Superpole. The main focus for the team is to get that to the end of the race, because we said it yesterday, it's worth saying again, John, if you finish, you've got a good chance of finishing well, haven't you?
Certainly a car like the Lexus running in the Silver Cup has got a very good chance of taking that particular victory, and that's ultimately what their focus is going to be upon. They're not necessarily looking at an outright victory, which if it did come, they'd be over the moon, to say the least. Probably want to fly there as well. But just thinking back just to the brief comments about going pretty much like Patrick Pilet's car, going second last. Of course, being Spa, there's no guarantee that track conditions will improve over the 20 or so minutes that these top 20 cars are going to be on racetrack. It's an assumption. There's no guarantee, but I think it's a fair assumption.
You're absolutely right. I mean, who knows what the weather could do? We had drivers yesterday complaining that if they were out in Q1, they got the worst of the track and disadvantaged against the 3 driver cars that didn't have to go out into Q1. Anyway, it is now time, and it's a special time actually at Spa, when we have the Super Pole, 20 minutes session, 20 cars, they go to minutes interval, 2 laps each, and it promises to show us who the really brave drivers are. It is everything on the line, and qualifying is always interesting when we're doing the aggregated times, but the Super Pole session promises to be very spectacular indeed. Let's, before we get to that, stay with Porsche drivers. Richard Lietz is now with Gemma.
Richard, we've just seen Kevin have to limp back to the pits. What was the problem? Was it simply the tyre?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, you know, with the rain tyres in these mixed conditions, there is still a lot of stress on the tyres if you do a rouge and, you know, push everywhere in the fast corners. And this load, we think, you know, it became to a damage, and to not have more damage, he drove very slow back. By driving slow back, the engine gets warm. That's why I think they tried to cool the engine now, because the temperature was quite high. But there is no big damage on the car. That's why I think it will be no issue for the Super Pole.
You think it's going to be okay?
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
Thank you.
Interesting point that. You drive it slowly to not do any damage to bodywork or to the tyre, but you risk making the car overheat. So it's a fine line that, John, isn't it, on your limp in lap?
I mean, it's something obviously the engineers in the paddock would have been fully aware of. They would have been telling Kevin if he hasn't got indicators, there'll be set indicators in the cockpit to tell him that it's gone over what is the normal maximum permitted temperature. But what he was doing was coming back at that pace to try and avoid doing something more serious, particularly around the differential around the transmission. But the consequence was running slowly meant that the water temperature and oil temperature as well. Remember, not just one. This is not an air-cooled engine, it's a water-cooled engine, as well as using oil as a lubricant. Keep those temperatures in control.
Raffaele Marciello and the ACA ASP team getting set for its run. Mercedes in Super Pole. The first one to go is the 2018 winner, Tom Blondquist. We have got 2 drivers within the 20 who have topped Super Pole before, Mauro Engel and Lawrence Van Thor. So it's going to be Tom Blondquist first, followed by Julian Andlau, then Albert Costa. Benjamin Hightes will be next. He's the only Silver Cup entry to go into Super Pole. Then Andrea Calderelli, Mathieu Vazivière, Christopher Harsa, Davide Rigon, Matteo Cairoli, Fred Makovici, Kevin Astre, Lawrence Van Thor, Charles Weir, Thomas Preining, Alessandro Pierguidi, Mauro Engel, Raffaele Marciello, Fred Verviche, Patrick Pilet, Kelvin van der Linde. Those are the 20.
Very, very difficult to sort of stick a finger up in the air and see which direction it's going to come from. I don't know who will be on pole position. You could take a gamble and say any one of those 20 drivers is capable at their period and 2 laps, 2-time laps, of locking out that front row.
So before we get to Super Bowl, let's have a quick look back at the warm-up with the cars not chasing times, but going out and going off. In the case of Pierre Eret, on his out lap, he fell off the road up at Descombe. Number 34 BMW, Augusto Farfus pressing on, and other Mercedes also getting sideways on this horrible track surface, greasy, and neither fully wet nor dry. So number 9 Bentley on track after its engine change yesterday. The Fricadelli Porsche bailing for the pit lane, being hustled along by the other K-Packs. Bentley Continental. Number 4 Mercedes, which is going to be a car to watch, I think, over the race, also looking for clear track space. And the warm-up session then with Benjamin Hightes having to take evasive action over Kevin S at an end. And now it's all eyes ready for Super Pole here at Spa. Super Pole at Spa. It is GT3's equivalent of happy hour, I guess. The cars will, at 1 minute intervals, come down the pit lane. The first car due to go in about 6.5 minutes' time. Tom Blondquist will be the driver of the Hub Auto Ferrari, and the premise is very simple. You get an outlap. You get 2 flying laps. The better lap time count, then you get your in-lap, and your work is done. And this sorts out the top 20 positions on the grid David Addison and John Watson eagerly looking forward to this because, John, this is where we see commitment highlighted one car at a time.
Unquestionably, but maybe I just throw a little spanner in the works. In normal dry conditions at Spa, shootout is always going to be the high point, certainly for me for Friday running. I just wonder, have teams had a discussion amongst themselves and said, let's rein it back. Instead of doing 10/10 laps, let's do a 9/10 lap and take what we get, because the risk of driving these cars in a changing track circumstance, it's getting darker by the minute. Coming up into La Source, the sun's going to be directly in the eyes of most drivers. It is easy to make one little mistake which could cause more problems than you'd even think about. So I just wonder, is everybody conditioned to either go out and take whatever they get, or be a little bit more, let's say, thoughtful and mindful that we'll do what we got to do, because it's more important to bring this car back after 3 laps or 4 laps, 1 out, 1 in, and 2 flying laps in one piece. If you start second or third quickest, frankly, it doesn't really matter.
The other interesting thing, you touched on the weather that might change, and it's going a bit darker and the clouds are more lead and above, but also the light is fading, isn't it? We are at just after 6:15 local time. We should finish round about 10 to 7, but it's going to be much darker then than it is now. So maybe being in the middle might be better. The track might be a bit dry, but you've still got the best of the light. So this could be a real lottery this session, couldn't it?
It is, absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, again, going back to the traditional race date in July, at 6:15 to 7 o'clock in the evening, it's still lots and lots of light. But we're now at the end of October. The light is falling pretty quickly. And of course, as the light falls, to some degree, though it's probably not going to be the biggest issue, ambient and track temperature will begin to fall away as well. So who's best placed? One might say, arguably, it's going to be Tom Blondquist. But, of course, automatically you'd want to be the last car on the lap.
Well, Blondquist will be the first to go, but let's see how his time stacks up. One of 3 Ferraris, because also to go will be Davide Rigon and also Alessandro Pierguidi. They are the other Ferrari drivers. Julian Andlau is getting set, so too is Benjamin Heites, the Chilean driver there in the Mercedes. So ACCA have got 2 cars into Superpole. But it is going to be Tom Blondquist for the Hub Auto Racing team, who will be the first to go. So his out time is 18:22. We're 18:18 and a half. So engines will fire up in a moment or two. Hopefully, nice warm tyres will be offered. But are we having to think wet here? I think we are. It's not dry enough, is it, for the brave ones to go onto slicks?
No, not at all. I mean, the track conditions, unlike last night, we saw with all the cars on track at the same time, 50 or more cars on track. Here now we've only going to have 20, albeit 10-15 minutes ago everybody was out on track, but not for sufficiently long to enable a drying line to develop. So the track is, I would say, uniformly slick, left to right, front, top to bottom.
Just talk me through, if you will, the outlap. Tom Blondquist's going to be the first person out. What does he need to do on that outlap to be absolutely ready to fire the gun, as it were, as he comes out of the bus stop? What dials is he looking at? What's he doing with tyres? Talk me around the outlap, John.
Principally, I mean, he'll ignore what's on the dials, unless some problem just pops up. He'll be given warning lights on that. I would imagine he'll want to go, assuming they're going to fit a new set of wet weather tyres, or certainly a set of tyres that's not done too many laps, because the maximum benefit from that set of tyres is going to be go out on that first lap, get that tyre temperature established, to then really push on your first flying lap, because that's arguably the lap that you'll get the better time out of. But again, because the track is going to gradually, bit by bit, improve, so it's consolidation on the second lap. Depending how you feel, if you've still got that grip available, then push.
Well, it is going to be intriguing. This, you can see that the light is going. Quick look above me. It's all pretty grey. And don't expect that even if it does start to rain, it'll do it all the way around the lap. You might end up with a dry section and a wet section, which is further drama for the teams. However, They do 2 laps, and it is your faster time that will count. So, Tom Blondquist gets ready. The CMR Bentley team, they are not part of Superpole, but they're being sensible about this, using the time before they knock off for the night to do practice pit stops, driver changes, and other teams ready to fit the tyres. The WRT Audi 60, sorry, the Attempto Audi 66 is the car that Frederic Verviche will drive. So there it is. It's been cleaned, it's polished, it's ready. Saying, give me some new tyres, then I can go for it.
Well, I have to say, just watching Fred Verviche in the warm-up session, he, to me, illustrated supreme confidence in his car. The balance of the car was good. He was able to run off track. He did it up at Lake Coombe towards the end of the session, but he was doing it with everything was positive. It was going forward. He wasn't wasting that energy, and that's an indication that Fred Verviche, he'll be the third from last to go. I mean, just oodles of confidence.
Can I put you on the spot then? Predict who's going to be fastest. What do you think?
Emotionally, you know what I'm going to say, David.
A Porsche.
Emotionally, correct. Which one, I don't know. We've got Lawrence Van Thor, Kevin Estra, where else? Julian Adlauer. I don't know. I mean, emotionally, I would love to see a Porsche. But, I mean, they've got 11 of them, and they're all so competitive. But it wouldn't surprise me if someone like Fred Verviche, who I thought just watching in those last few moments, looked like he knew what he needed to do. The car looked good. He wasn't having to work hard behind the wheel. But who else? Everybody. I mean, from Tom Blondquist down to Kelvin van der Linde. Kelvin van der Linde last night was the dominant driver, unquestionably. And again, when it comes to driving in these conditions, you know, Kelvin van der Linde has got so much capacity. He's going to stick that Audi, in his mind, without any sweat whatsoever, on pole position.
So we are at 18:22, almost 18:23, and I haven't yet seen Tom Blondquist go down the pit lane. That car had an engine change, but it did venture out, as we saw, for the warm-up session. So all target times are delayed by 2 minutes, I'm told. So 18:24 is now going to be the start time. So, yes, add 2 to the time. Why it's been delayed by 2 minutes, possibly the fact that Kevin Astor was late in, and therefore the track wasn't closed until then. However, there is Tom Blom down the pit lane. So the Ferrari heading down the pit road. It looks quite bright at La Source. It looks pretty gloomy looking in other directions around Spa. But Blondquist will be the first one to go. He's won the event before, and this Ferrari, nice slippery shape that should certainly work on the climb up towards Le Comte, cutting through the air.
I mean, I think the 488 Ferrari is a turbocharged motor. It's just a race car. Again, in the sense of a mid-engined, rear-engined race car, that is very kind to its drivers. It's the reason why it's the most popular brand, primarily amongst the AMs that compete here or even in Pro-Am categories. It's a car that helps the driver rather than actually sometimes you think works against a driver.
Well, there is Tom Blondquist making his way down the pit lane, so it'll be potentially the second lap that is going to be the quicker of the two. But it doesn't always follow, because sometimes the driver pushes on so hard that they make a mistake. But we are in business then. The Hub Auto Racing Ferrari accelerates out of the pit lane, and Tom Blondquist now accelerates, getting everything up to temperature, John.
Yeah, he's going to go hard on this out lap. Unlike if this was a dry session on a brand new set of Pirelli slicks, you may not want to push. I mean, certainly not the first part of the out lap. You may push as you come into the third sector. But on these wet weather tyres, he will want to run as quickly as he can. So then when he comes up to take the first flying lap, he is confident that the Pirelli wets are at the operating temperature they need to be to get the best out of it. I mean, the track looks actually not bad, but it's wet. I mean, it's still, there's a degree of moisture. It's not dry enough for anybody to be brave enough to look at slicks. But as I say that, I wonder, will anybody roll the dice towards the end of the session? I can't see it, but sometimes teams will take that opportunity.
Well, the worst you could do is end up 20th, isn't it? So it's not like you're going to be at the back of the 50-plus grid. You would only be 20th. You'd be slowest within this session. Out next goes Julian Andlauer in the Rover Racing Porsche. So remember, it is 1 minute intervals, each car released, and the driver has a very simple task on that outlap. Get the tyres nice and warm, get confident in the car, get confident in the grit offered up to you by the circuit.
Yeah, Julian Adler came out of the pit lane very hot indeed. In fact, he went over the demarcation line, which probably would be a bit of a no. Certainly in a race it would be. Whether it would be observed in this shootout's another matter. But he pushed very hard, certainly harder than Tom Blondquist did.
I would go along with that. Shows the commitment. Yes, we'll wait and see what the stewards feel about it. There is Tom Blondquist building up for the quick lap. So it's got to start here, hasn't it, John? A good run through Blanchimont into the bus stop and then to start the lap.
Yes, this is where you're going to gain your confidence, being able to get through Blanchimont at a good lick, and then the run up into this big braking as you come up into turn 17 and 18. Now, he may use a slightly unusual entry line. He's hugging the curb. He goes very far. That sudden cutback. Now, in a race, you probably wouldn't do that. But on a qualifying lap, you want to straighten the car up to get across start-finish line at the best maximum speed you're going to do. That's why Tom Blondquist took that particular line.
And this is the quietest the track will be for anybody really over the weekend. Every other session you've got cars around you, and here Blondquist in splendid isolation with the road to himself comes past the second part of the pit lane, the heritage pits, the endurance pits, the old pits, call them what you will, down towards Eau Rouge, rides the curb, flicks it right up through Radion now, and he's on it, John.
Yes, he was slightly off the apex, but I don't think that's a big issue. Maybe just the front tire didn't quite give him the bite at the point when he turned the steering wheel. Got a good exit out of Radio all the way up now. The long Camel straight getting up to, well, in these conditions, probably around about 260 or so kilometres per hour. Then the big break into Les Combes. Careful not to outbrake yourself. Easy thing to do. As much as you want to get your tyre up to tyre temperature, you need to have had your brakes likewise up to brake temperature before you get on the brakes with a big stop into Les Combes.
Down to Bruxelles comes Tom Blondquist. Remember, as we go through these laps, purples are what counts. Now, obviously, it will be purple for Blondquist because there's nobody else to gauge him against. But subsequently, if it's purple, it's worth getting excited about. Out of Speaker's Corner, way out wide, onto that runoff area. They're all at it. That's almost the new racing line. Gravel traps are set to be put back in to certain areas of Spa for next year. So it's all going to be a bit different when we're back here in under 12 months' time. But right now, Blondquist out of Pont, over the curb, down to the pit path.
Yeah, he looked a little bit, I would say, conservative as he went into Pujol. I think he might have gone down even a gear. I thought I heard that the blip on the change down, and certainly on the exit was fine, but maybe just being a little bit cautious, conservative on this first flying lap, just to get a sense of where the car is, and maybe just building for that second flying lap when he can just deliver all the potential he has, and that his Ferraris.
So this is Tom Blondquist then, and he's going to be the first driver to set a time. Remember, you get 2 laps, so towards the end of the session, it's going to be a case of really looking at the cars firing out of the bus stop to see where they blend in. But Blondquist using all of the road and then some. Comes out of Blanchimont now through the little right-hand kink that takes you to the bus stop. The car starts to quiver a little bit under braking as he hunts for the grip way up the curb. Tries to take another couple of inches out of the lap length. Here he is, out of the bus stop, over the curb. Rattles back onto the racetrack. What is this flying lap going to be? A 2:34.273 is the answer. That is the benchmark time.
Yes, and that's a fairly good, I think, opening lap for Tom Blondquist. He was hugging the right-hand side of the racetrack as he came up to the chicane, because clearly he's concerned that by running on what might be the driest bit of the racetrack is just maybe too fractional, too marginal for the Pirelli wet weather tyre. So let's watch and see what Andlauer does in the Porsche. Certainly the more aggressive of the two drivers on his exit out of pit lane, and now watch him as he comes up into Blanchimont.
But he's not going purple, and that's what we're after, so it's good. But is it going to be as good as Blondquist? He needs to be really good in this last sector, so the Porsche down towards the bus stop. He will brake hard, right up the curb, just like Blondquist, trying to take another couple of inches out of the lap length now. Runs it way out wide, and that makes the lap longer as he comes back onto the road, over the line. Goes quickest, 2:34.008 then. That is 0.2 up on Blondquist. They get another lap, remember, but that's a really good opening effort by Julien Andlauer.
Yeah, but watch what's going on now with Albert Costa. Wow, does he run it out to the edge of the racetrack? Almost caught the right rear in the gravel as he now comes down into Campos. Then the short sprint up to what I love as the Old Stabilo, now known as the Paul Frere Courbe. I mean, Albert Costa is a bit of racetrack and a bit of runoff. Well, let's all run off and racetrack. All blends into one. Commitment is through the first sector, 3/10 second up, half a second up in the middle sector. So potentially, and in fact the quickest lap time now is by Adlauer, but I think it's going to be eclipsed by the Spanish driver in the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghini. So watch how he enters again, climbs over the curb on the inside, gets it straightened up, runs probably again way off the racetrack, but the squirt between here and the start finish line, 2:33.4, significantly quicker, 0.6 of a second over the second place Porsche.
That's impressive, isn't it? And who do we look to next? There is Tom Blonkis on his second lap. Well, personal best sector 1, but he was slower than he needed to be in the second sector, so a little bit down on what he did on his first lap. So it's a bit of a yo-yo lap this for Tom Blanc. Down to the chicane, adapting from a Mini Cooper he raced at Goodwood a week ago, or tried to because it got damaged in a qualifying session, to a Ferrari GT3 car. He won here for BMW. Where will this lap put him? Third he is, over the timing line. Third he stays. Now, this is
yes,
still the Cup car, isn't it? This Benjamin Highties. So let's see what the Mercedes can do.
Interesting they didn't put out Jimmy Pla in this car. I don't know what reasons there is behind that, but certainly it was Jimmy Pla who would have secured the lap in that particular Mercedes. Comes across start finish line. Not unsurprisingly, goes fourth quickest on a 2:34. Nevertheless, good effort, 2:34.7, but against a 2:33.4. So that's the best part of 1.3 seconds down. In fairness, that was a good effort from Hites.
Yeah, go along with that. Certainly he's new to the venue. Julian Andlauer has not given up yet. This is his second lap. Then he's got a corner to go out of the bus stop. He now comes. He's another one going so wide. He's adding to the lap length. Fires it over the timing line. A 2:33.4 to beat. And he does a 2:33.7. So his second lap quicker, but he stays second in the times. Albert Costa, though, thus far is the man to watch. He is the fastest. And this is Andrea Calderelli up to the end of his first flyer, John.
Yeah, looked stellar coming through Blanchimont. Maybe a little bit too late on the brakes going into the bus stop chicane. Didn't quite get the car in the position to make the transition from right to left. Nevertheless, goes second quickest with his first flying effort, and he's 0.2 of a second down on the sister brand, not the sister team. Albert Costa is the man currently, and that is Albert Costa coming up. But he hasn't done anything on this second lap, indicating what he put into it, the energy he put into those Pirelli tires. Again, the issue of looking for the wettest parts now of the Spa circuit rather than running on the racing line to give the tyre that little bit of last gasp of grip that they're probably screaming, enough!
Albert Costa across the line, so he is the fastest. A sort of Costa Espresso, really, that quick, and he is currently the fastest by 1/5 of a second. He's done. Calderelli has another chance. He's got another lap. Mathieu Vazivière is up to the end of his first flying lap in the WRT Audi, brought in at the last moment as driver shuffles, but he did win, don't forget, at Imola. First time out for WRT, so he's got a good track record, and Vazivière breaks the beam to go 6th fastest.
I would say he'll be disappointed. I think he'll be very disappointed. I would have expected him to be certainly in the top 3 at this stage, but he's got one more lap to go, so there's plenty of time for an improvement for the Belgian in the WRT Audi.
So who do we look to next then? Because Fred Makovici, Christopher Harsa, Mathieu Cairoli, they're all out there. This is Christopher Harsa, Audi number 25, and look at that, a purple middle sector. This could put him at the top, couldn't it?
Not only purple, but almost by half a second, and he's only got this turn, the Blanchimont to complete, then up to the chicane. So again, staying on the right hand side of the track, the wetter part of the track, compromises his entry into the corner. It's again slightly overruns in the mid, but then opens up the exit, gets on the throttle, drives the Audi as hard as he can. Is it going to be a 2:33? It is a 2:32.
Mega effort, mega. Christopher Harsa goes quickest by 0.421 of a second. Now, what about Calderelli here? This is his second lap, and his first sector was a better one, but his second sector was down by half a second of what it needs to be. So it's ebbed away a bit in the middle here, hasn't it?
Yes, and I think what we're seeing is that the first flying lap is the lap where the time is going to be. The second flying lap is principally because the tyres in these conditions are being pushed literally to their limit in terms of grip. That's why we're seeing drivers, where possible, running on the wettest parts of the racetrack. And I think the second flying lap is a case of you push the tyre really to the limit on the first flying lap, and that's going to be your best effort.
So Calderelli second. So the order is Christopher Harsa from Andrea Calderelli from Albert Costa, Julian Andlauer fourth, Tom Blondquist fifth. Now look at Vazivier on his second lap. Yeah, absolute best.
Yes. Now, yes, I mean, his sixth time, his first flying lap. Maybe he took it that little bit more cautiously, I don't know, but certainly he had enough in the tank to go fastest overall in Sector 1 and improve in Sector 2. So what can the Belgian do as he comes up to complete? I'm not sure he's going to either match or improve on Christopher Harsa, but he's going to put himself into the top 3, I would assume. Again, it's the end of the lap where you can lose time, that very slow right and left, just overdriving or just overrunning into turn 17.
Breaks the beam, goes sixth, so it was a better lap time, moves him up the order, puts him behind Blondquist, and ahead of, for the moment, Davide Rigon, their number 30 then, having done its laps, Mathieu Vazivier. Mathieu Cairoli, Porsche mounted, let's see what he can do. This is the end of his first flyer. A 2:32 is where they need to be aiming. It doesn't look like it's going to happen for him. It's a 33, a 34. Only fifth, John.
There are other Porsches in the top 20, and I wouldn't say ye have little faith, as you love the brand as I do.
Well, indeed. Now, here's another star, Fred Makovici. But this looks like a modest first lap, don't you think?
By Fred's standards, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't look like he's on it, coming down into campus. It looks as if he's thinking that I do a first flying lap, which is going to be conservative. I will have enough remaining to have a pop at the opportunity to take pole position. Doesn't look like he's committed, and he's 4 seconds down in the middle sector. Now, maybe he had made a mistake somewhere and he recognises, just back out of it, save the tyres, I'll correct what I might have done. We didn't see what he did earlier in the lap. I can only assume that there was maybe an error on the part of Fred, and that's why that 4-second deficit is in the second sector.
This is Davide Rigon. Look at that, down in the middle, 9/10 down. So something has ebbed away for Davide Rigon within the middle third of the lap. So this ain't going to be that good, I fear, and he's 8th at the moment. But Kevin Estre is out on track, so 47 Porsche is another one that we can get excited about shortly, because Kevin Estre, as well as Fred Makovici, are going to be worth watching, as here it comes, Rigon up towards the bus stop. But it's, John, it's a bit so-so this lap, isn't it?
Well, I've just noticed maybe in the last couple of cars running, whether track conditions are now at the point where they're actually getting into the limit of the wet weather tyre earlier than maybe some of the earlier runners did. Don't know, it's only sort of supposition on my part, but Davide Rigon has gone 5th quickest, so it's a good effort, and he's got one more lap to go.
So out of the Lassour's hairpin he comes then. So down the hill he plunges. This is going to be good. Kevin Estre, with all the tyres inflated now, uses all of the road he can find coming out of the bus stop, and he goes up to 4th fastest, personal and absolute. So it was good. Can the second lap be even better? Let's ride with him.
Well, he got that purple in the final sector, so Revan Kevin is going to give it one big time on a second flying lap.
There you've got Lawrence Van Thor, who comes then now up through the campus right-hander on towards the Courbe Paul Frere. Now, what about a Van Thor time? This is going to be his first flying lap. It's not purple, so it's there or thereabouts, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you get 3 greens, that's going to give you a very, very good opportunity again to get up onto the top, what I would call 3 rows of the grid, which is where everyone in the top 20 would like to be. When you get further down the field, all the way down to the 10th row of the grid, then you're beginning to get sort of seduced into the midfield itself. So Kevin, much more economical, very much more economical from Lawrence Van Thor than we've seen from others, focusing on the exit rather than on the pace into that final chicane.
Only 11th,
didn't result in a time.
Oh.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Bearing in mind he's been twice a winner of Superpole, Lawrence Van Thor. So, was it yesterday Nick Tandy was telling Jabber in the pits that they just weren't quite 100% happy with the Rover Porsches. Now, what about Charles Weerts? He's been a real find, hasn't he, in his limited GT career?
He's young, he's fast. You know, when you're that age, fear, what's fear? What was a great movie? I remember going to see that years ago. No, he's a racer. 18, I think, maybe turning 19 very soon.
So where's this lap going to put him?
Overruns.
In strife is where it puts him, rattles up over the curb, and that compromises the whole run through the bus stop, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why into those last two turns, it's better to be slow in, fast out. The way Van Thor did it, but of course Van Thor's time didn't translate into an overall quick time. So let's have a look at.
Now that's Thomas Priming, who is on a start-up lap. So this is his first flyer. A bit like Makovic, doesn't look that flying. Makovic 7th on his second lap. Sorry, John, yeah.
No, you're right. I was just going to say, again, you're sensing that the push that's coming from the Porsches is not looking the same as you're seeing from. I mean, I remember Albert Costa coming through Paul Frécourt. The whole attitude of the car looked like it was literally there was nothing left. Whereas with the Porsches that we've seen so far, none of them have looked as if they're being ragged as you would have expected them to be.
Precisely so. I mean, Priming's times are okay. He was only 9 thousandths down in the first sector, but lost a little bit more in the middle. So let's see where this is going to put him. It's his first flying lap, so he's got another shot. The GPX Racing Squad winners last year. Thomas Priming goes second. Well, how about that? It may not have looked all that dramatic, but it's put him up to second, and he's only 11 thousandths down on Christopher Harsa. Hat tip there to Thomas Priming.
And now Laurent Van Thor likewise. After that rather conservative opening lap, now certainly picked up 1.7 seconds in the middle sector. So has he been holding something back? Has he been doing what maybe some drivers have thought, that don't nail it in the first lap, but work towards getting a second lap and using all the benefits of having 2 laps before you go to your final flying lap?
So here comes Van Thor then up through the bus stop. Behind him on the road, Maro Engel has done a purple first sector in the Mercedes. That's Van Thor, 14th. Still a bit full of woe, but Maro Engel is going to be the next one to watch then. Also, Alessandro Pierguidi is out there, and he has done an absolute best in the middle sector. So we are certainly not done yet, as there, Alessandro Pierguidi up to the end of his first flying lap. A purple is good, remember. The time to beat is a 2:32.979. It's going to be close, this, as he accelerates towards the line, and he goes third, 2:33.024.
And he got 2 purple sectors and still only ended up third. So, I mean, I don't know what he did in the first sector. It was a personal best, but it's irrelevant. So, a good run by Alessandro Pierguidi as we go now to Maro Engel. Purple. This guy has lit up the number 4 HRT Racing Mercedes. Just go cleanly. And he gets a lovely entry and a nice, well, rather late wide exit out of Blanchimont, but carries the momentum now. Slow it down and get it in cleanly. Don't overrun. Does a nice job. That's what you want to do. Then back on the throttle as you turn to the left. Powers the car out. The balance of a mid-front engine car always is going to help you on the exit, that final turn.
To the top of the times, Maro Engel then, a 2:32.522 and a margin of 0.4 of a second. That's pretty special.
Very much so, and it really offers up a big challenge here to the other principal Mercedes-Benz driver, Raffaele Marcello. Personal best in the first sector, but not matching Maro Engel, who is still holding that purple into the second sector, has picked up, and he's gone by 1900ths of a second quicker than the number 4 Mercedes. So it looks like it's a challenge between the 2 Mercedes right now to take that provisional pole position.
In the first sector, Raffaele Marciello nearly 0.4 down on the absolute best. So he's going to have to really work this car hard to make up for that lost time in the last sector. On the evidence of the sector times, I'm not convinced this is going to be good enough for the front row, but let's see. Second gear through the bus stop, lines it up, winds off the lot now, runs it out wide, up against the tyre stack, back onto the road, breaks the beam and goes quickest. He's done it, a 2:32.166 there. Brilliant lap by Marciello.
I mean, at one point I thought you were going to say he's going to end up third, and all of a sudden the time. So let's have a look and see what Raffaele can do on the second flying lap. But you know, it's so difficult to judge as you're getting sector times. fastest sector time in sector 2, but nothing particularly special. But he had to. Whoa! Well, that was almost a Marciello chucking at the apex at Eau Rouge, and then he had to balance the steering and the throttle. Maybe he's done all the hard yards he needs to do on that first flying lap and may just say, that's it.
Well, we're about to find out, because there he breaks the beam at the end of the first sector. Not an absolute best, but quicker by 3/10 than he went last time. So Marciello could yet do another even better lap time here.
He could do, but I mean, he almost kisses the gravel on the exit of Malmedy down the hill. So, and again, running out to the edge of the racetrack. Now, I think normally you do that for more grip. I'm not sure he's doing it on this run. I think he's losing grip. We'll wait to see what his second sector time is. If it's a green for personal best, a purple for overall best, I suspect that Raffaelli's had the best of his Pirelli rubber on that first flying lap.
Fred Verviche has had a lap time cancelled for track limit abuse going up through Eau Rouge and Radion. So Fred Verviche has lost his first lap time. How about that as Marciello presses on here?
Well, I don't know at which point he would have been made aware of that, but immediately he would have been made aware of it. Back off. Save the rubber. Give yourself that one final opportunity. I mean, that's the only driver we know who's been given a penalty for track limit abuses up in turn 4. So purple or green for Marciello in the middle sector.
Oh, neither. He's down, he's lost time. So he made time up in sector 1, but he's about 6/10 off his own best in the middle sector. So the middle is where people do seem to be dropping the time. And Marciello, it's going to be good, but is it going to be better? I mean, the first lap surprised me with how good it was, given the time he'd lost within sector 1. He did make amends, certainly. Down to the bus stop. We've got Van der Linde and Verviche still to go. Patrick Pilet's first lap has put him 9th, incidentally, but Raffaele Marciello then now comes out of the bus stop. This new line that everybody is taking, abusing the track limit there, and the lap is a 2:32.166, so he goes onto pole position. 2:32.547 is the second one, so it's the first one that counts. Didn't go any quicker, but he's still topped by 3/10, with Van der Linde and Verviche set to affect the order now.
So Kelvin van der Linde is going to be the bigger challenger, but look, half a second down in the middle sector. So the pace that we saw from the 88 Mercedes Raffaelli and we saw from Mauro Engel, so this is going to be a struggle to get the Mercedes. Well, he's split the Mercedes right now, so nothing that Mauro Engel can do. He's now going to be in the second row of the grid. Kelvin van der Linde fastest in that final sector. If you watch Fred Verviche, remember this is the car, I thought, the way that Verviche was driving it, second lap, he had his first lap eliminated because track limits, personal best. What can the Belgian drag out? Can he get his car onto the front row of the grid?
He's not looking at purples, is he? And that middle sector is giving away quite a big chunk of time. 8/10 as he climbs up over the curb. Front row doubtful, second row possible, third row maybe more likely. Let's see, where will Fred Verviche slot in as he comes up to the timing line now? 4th fastest. Fred Verviche goes 4th outside of the second row of the grid. But at the end of Superpole, it is Raffaele Marciello by 2/10 of a second from Kelvin van der Linde. It is Mercedes Audi in the top 4.
So van der Linde's still got a second lap. And into Brussels, and you sit and you wait for the grip to bite, and then down into Speaker's Corner. So Van der Linde is the only person who can now challenge Raffaele Marciello for that cosseted pole position for the Total Spa 24 hours event. Going to be in, well, 24 hours from now, we're going to be getting into what is the best part of the 4th and a bit hour into night time. Fighting the way. Oh, Kevin!
Hits the curb, launched it.
He did. I mean, that again is time lost. Although he had his foot buried against the firewall, he just drove it out of it. He didn't even bother about it, just drove it out of this, almost a tank slapper he got into.
Well, we talked at the start of this Superpole about commitment. There is more evidence of it because Kelvin van der Linde is leaving nothing on the table. He's dropped 3/10 of a second. So the 2/10 he'd made up, he's lost 3/10 in the middle. What can he do? He had to find 2/10 anyway to go ahead of Raffaele Marciello. So he's lost a big chunk of time against his own earlier better time in Sector 2. I can't see it being an improvement. Look at the lack of light compared to the start of Superpole. Now he's wide out of Blanchimont. back onto the road, down to the bus stop, hard on the brakes, down through the gears, fourth, third, second, first, turn in. The time he's looking to beat is a 2:32.166. It ain't going to happen, is it? Or is it? 30, 31, 32.458. So Kelvin van der Linde stays second fastest, fractionally slower on his second lap. But boy, did he try hard. And Fred Verviche is down in both of the sectors. So it is Raffaele Marciello who has done it. But what a session, full of drama and full of commitment.
Yeah, and certainly for Kelvin van der Linde, that last lap, if he didn't get the pole position, I would give him an A star for effort, because he's certainly, particularly coming down Fagnes, that right, left, and just, I mean, all over the racetrack. But he managed to gather it up, I say, out of Pujol, so far off to the right. So Fred Verviche drives into the pit lane. His 2 laps are complete.
So Raffaele Marciello for Mercedes, for Acker ASP, is the man that tops Superpole. And Kelvin van der Linde in perhaps a more exciting way to watch, but he's the man second fastest. Lawrence Van Thor slowest in Porsche number 98. He'll be very disappointed indeed with that. But great job done, wasn't it, by Raffaele Marciello?
I mean, just as typical Marciello. I mean, I call him, he's the laconic Italian racing driver. And it's just his manner, the way he speaks to you. It's just, you know, normally you anticipate Italians being excitable, and he just stands there and says it in that laconic fashion.
Let's see what he's got to say after Superpole then. Raffaele Marciello is the quickest, and he's ready to talk to Gemma Scott.
Raffaele, a fantastic Superpole. Well done.
Yeah, it was a good quali for us. I mean, it doesn't matter so much the position, but it's always good to start in top 5, top 10 for the big one. So you try to be out of the trouble at the beginning, but I mean, it's saying nothing, but I mean, it was quite nice to have 2 clean laps for me, and yeah, it worked quite well.
And now, of course, the big work begins tomorrow with the 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it will be dry. Like quite a lot, and for me actually it's better. I hope for dry, but I mean it's the same for everyone. We will see, we'll be long, but we will try our best.
Thank you very much, and well done once again.
Well done, Raffaele Marciello. Complimenti Raffaele. Now, John, let's have a look
second
at,
was in the end, sorry.
the lap of the gods.
So, yes, coming out of La Source, the run down the hill, and actually I thought he had to make a correction on the steering as he rushes down up to about 220 plus kilometers per hour. Watch what happens here as he goes right. Oh, you can hear he's having to feather the throttle, cuts across radio, maybe just within the limit of what's accepted. Now he can sit back and relax momentarily as he climbs up the Carmel straight all the way up to Lake Coombe, spot where he's going to get on the brakes. That's pretty late in these conditions. Then rides the curb on the entry, feathers the throttle, actually pulled a gear, feathers the throttle, rather pull a higher gear and avoid the torque and the wheel spin, runs it way out to the edge of the track again on the exit of Malmedy, then down into Bruxelles, fighting the car coming in, and again he took this long way around, but then he made the corner into a V rather than a U to try and straighten the car up, then into this funny old corner. Don't really like it, but anyway, it's a corner on the racetrack, one of 18 corners. My least favourite corner. Here's my favourite corner, into Pujol. Again, hanging out in the middle to the outside of the circuit, looking for that slightly wetter part of the racetrack, hoping that's where the grip is going to be. Then a good clean exit out of Pujol, then all the way down to Fagnes. Again, probably rides the curve. No, he doesn't, he stays off the curve. So, just about maybe a couple of feet away, same as he turns left. Swings through the exit of Fagnes, runs the curve on the exit, pretty much standard fare. Then on the brakes again, tries to get the nose of the Mercedes in, runs wide. I think he might have clattered into the gravel just very, very slightly. Then exit of Paul Francoeur, uses all the racetrack and everything else that's available to him, and sits back. I mean, just thinking of that interview. I mean, Italians are meant to be excitable and passionate. Raffaele, I say, laconic and almost unemotional. So untypical of an Italian racing driver, but I mean a superb racing driver, one of the class of the field, in a field of class drivers here this weekend.
No argument about it. Through the bus stop, right, left, and then John, loud pedal to the floor.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's a tall lad. He can push that pedal way beyond where it's designed to go.
And what a lap. Faster than anybody else in Superpole. So this is the order then. It is Raffaele Marciello, who provisionally will start on pole position, ahead of Kelvin van der Linde. Mauro Engel going third, ahead of Fred Vervisch, and then Christopher Harsa. Thomas Preining sixth from Alessandro Pierguidi and Andrea Calderelli. Albert Costa ninth from Kevin Est. Of course, that's last year's winning trio, Leeds, Christensen and Kevin Est. Then Patrick Pillet 11th, ahead of Charles Weert. And behind him, Julien Andlau 13th, Fred Macavicki 14th, Matteo Cairoli 15th, Tom Blondquist was 16th, ahead of Mathieu Vazivière, David Irigon, Benjamin Heites and Laurens Vanthoor, rounding out the 20 drivers. So let's catch up with some of the opposition. Dries Vanthoor's thoughts next with Gemma.
Dries, Kelvin certainly put in a good fight there. Second row, or second place rather, I should say. Still a good position.
Yeah, I mean, very happy. I mean, first front row is a very good starting position here in Spa. He had a good lap. He had a small mistake into four, or exit of four, which cost him, I think, a bit. Who knows what would have been possible without, but I think, anyway, P2 is a good starting position for us. Big thanks to the boys who've been working all day to make sure everything is ready for tomorrow. And yeah, starting P2 is a good starting position, so very happy with that.
And look, this year you're going head-to-head with your brother as well, competing, both in very strong cars.
Yeah, he had a bit of a tough time on quali, but I'm sure that they will come back in the race and that he will be there fighting for victory.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, Dries Vanthoor set to take on his brother. No doubt get them on track together at some point over the 24-hour race as he heads over to talk to Christopher Mies and the rest of the WRT night shift that stayed for Superpole. So Raffaele Marciello tops those times. They're the cars now all in Parc Fermé. Are we a bit disappointed, John, with Porsche, the best being sixth out of all of that?
Yes, in principle, I would say that maybe more was expected. But as I sort of alluded to earlier in the broadcast, getting into the top 20 was what was the focus of all these teams. Whether they start in the first row of the grid or, say, the 10th row of the grid, to some degree, ultimately, is not going to have a bearing on who's going to win this race. This race is going to be won by everything that we've been talking about previously, and that's keeping out of trouble for the entire 24 hours.
Yes, of course, it's one of those sessions where if you're on pole, it matters a lot, and if you're not, you suddenly say, yeah, well, you know, it's 24 hours of racing, Superpole doesn't really matter, but there's pride at stake. But equally, let's see what the race brings. It will start at 3:30 tomorrow. Because of the clock change, we finish at 2:30 on Sunday, and Superpole going the way of Raffaele Marciello, 0.2 of a second quicker than Kelvin van der Linde. So let's remind ourselves what happened in Superpole. As ever, full of drama, out on track went Tom Blondquist. First, he got the best of the light, but he didn't necessarily get the driest of roads. 16th was Tom Blondquist's better lap. Andrea Calderelli, he managed to get into the top 8 in the Lamborghini number 63, despite, like many of them, running so wide coming out of the bus stop, he was really adding to the length of the circuit. Number 163 Lamborghini, Albert Costa had already gone through, but Costa had done a good job. Briefly the quickest, but he fell to 9th come the end of the session as everybody else shuffled the order around him. What about number 25, upholding Audi honour, Christopher Harsa? He turned his way out of Bruxelles, plunged down the hill, and Harsa in the end, 5th fastest. More was to come for Audi, but also there was more to come from Mercedes. Mauro Engel, 3rd. He's top Superpole in the past. You knew exactly what was required of him, and he lit up the timing screen going purple, purple and purple, but others went yet faster. So Engel 3rd. Raffaele Marciello was spectacular as ever. Flished the car through Eau Rouge, and Raffaele Marciello the fastest, 0.2 up on everybody else. So Raffaele Marciello's car will start on pole position. The Total 24 Hours of Spa is almost upon us because we go racing at 3:30 tomorrow. We're on air from 3. We'll look forward to your company then, but for now, from all of us here at Spa, it's good night.